Straight. You traveled back through time in a time machine that you built yourself with your furry little paws. Yeah. And you decided to leave the paradise because you were bored? Well, no, not really. I had plenty to do. You were... I don't know. I'm trying to understand why you would leave paradise, which you're always talking about how everything sucks so bad here. I think the viewers just don't understand. We don't get it. Well, I'll level with you. There was problems. Things get weird after a few billion years, if you know what I mean. That prophecy about the rocks crying out, that came true, and it scared the hell out of me. The rocks are crying out? Yeah, but after about 500 billion years, everything starts talking. Calm down, right now! And it was in the 80s, mostly in the 80s, especially, but especially in the 90s, was a thing that was going on where the Kingdom Hall was glutted with welfare moms. It got to be, the Kingdom Hall, every time you turned around, there was another single mom with her kids. And easy. Just telling it like it is. The Kingdom Hall became a place for moms with kids, big women, big fat women with kids, lots of them. They come to the Kingdom Hall because that was the babysitting service. And it was the way that pioneers made their time. Well, it's in service, except not really out in service. Driving other women's kids to school. Taking them to Pizza Hut. Taking them to the park. Taking them here and there. Driving them to the store. And I'm not kidding you. My oldest sister, there was this woman in the hall. And my oldest sister practically raised this woman's kids. She bought their school supplies. She was always taking them to the skating rink, taking them here, picking them up for the meetings, driving them home after the meetings. And this woman wasn't even a publisher. She was just a woman who came to the Kingdom Hall for years. Never did anything. Never went out in service. Never got baptized. Was never even a publisher. Just a woman who was always at the meetings. Tina! Big heifer of a woman. And it was just the way it was. And there was always every female pioneer in the congregation, every housewife who was pioneering was the crutch for some woman that never made the truth her own. And it was a dynamic that it was the yin and yang of the Kingdom Hall. And it was the free ride for all the women, big women, tons of kids, and tons of Jehovah's Witnesses to pick up the slack. I recall there was a time when Tina had a son, Brandon, who was getting to be upwards of 10, 11 years of age, and the brothers got him signed up on the Theocratic Ministry School. And I remember his first talk. He went up on stage. They got he's a pretty big kid, but they got him a little stool to stand on so he'd get up to the top of the podium. And he even had his little suit buttoned up over his fat little belly, and he had a little clip-on tie. He even had little glasses, little Napoleon Dynamite glasses put on. And he was doing a Bible reading, doing the number 2 talk. And a little 5-minute Bible reading, he stumbled through it. Reading slow and looking at every word and never looking up. And then after the talk, everyone claps. And That's a normal thing for kids. Here's what's not normal. Going trick-or-treating the next week. I went to the Central Mall, and I am not kidding. It was the very next week after this kid gave a talk on the stage in the Kingdom Hall of Jehovah's Witnesses. I see him at the mall on their trick-or-treating. They do it the day before Halloween to have a safe Halloween for kids. And all the kids, it's like a parade there. And I am not even kidding you. He was dressed like G.I. Joe, and he had an orange bag with a jack-o'-lantern on it full of Halloween candy. And the week before, he stood on a stage. And even though it is a school, yes, I recognize what you're going to say. It's a school. Anyone can sign up for it. I am cognizant of that. Does not escape my cognition, friends. But I would also like to remind you that I would like to point out that several years later, when an elder confronted me about a video I had on my cell phone that I was going around showing to people, and he wanted to see it, and I said no. The theocratic ministry school was one of the privileges that was taken away from me as punishment. And we had Brandon on the theocratic ministry school and trick-or-treating. He didn't drive himself to the mall. Tina, I saw that fat woman sitting in the food court. She dressed her kid up in a Halloween costume, bring him to the mall to go trick-or-treating. Dick from the Kingdom Hall named Jerry. And Jerry had 3 sons, approximately my age. And they went to the same high school as me. 3 boys. They were ages like 15, 16, and 17. And Jerry worked a 9-to-5 job. He was your typical blue-collar idiot, but he decided that even though he didn't have the time to pioneer, his sons were going to be pioneers. And how could he do this? Since he and his wife were occupied during the daytime, Jerry concocted a scheme that he would have the glory of having a pioneer family without actually doing it himself. And he was going to send his sons to school wearing suits and ties. He was going to make them wear their Kingdom Hall clothes to school. They could remove their jackets during the school period if allowed, but they wore full Kingdom Hall attire to the high school. High school. And the plan was that they were going to witness in between classes. They would stand in the hallway and hand out tracts. They would do, the pillboard witnessing just in the hallway of a school instead of the street corner of 1920s New York. And if you're asking, were they incredibly popular at high school? How did you know? And they, one of the boys, I remember, they started calling him Father Trojak because he was wearing a suit and always had a Bible. And he checked out territory cards for the boys, and they had about a 3-mile walk home. Instead of taking the bus, they would walk home from school together, ostensibly, whilst wearing their suits and ties and carrying their book bags. And before they went home to do their homework, they could spend an hour or 2 working a territory card in the vicinity of their school that he had checked out. And then they would walk home together. And if you're asking yourself, or asking me, did these 3 boys grow up to be as crazy as rats from a shithouse? I would reverse the question and ask back to you, what do you think? From our hall, the Jansons, your typical mom and dad, and they had a bunch of kids. One of them was a little boy who was born with a deformity. And he was missing part of his skull. and it was like a cleft lip, but more serious. He was actually missing part of his face. And he was okay though. He wasn't retarded or anything. He was just I don't know. And he was okay though. He had his little friends at the Kingdom Hall, and his family made him feel comfortable, and he did fine. He even commented at the meetings. Unfortunately, whenever he tried to talk, it was a slobbery mess. It was unintelligible. But nevertheless, they always called on him so that he could express his, I don't know. And anyway, the Watchtower study, one Watchtower study I remember, he raised his little hand in the air, and Brother Norman, who was on stage, called on him. And they brought the microphone over, and the little boy said, "Jesus Christ is our exemplar as we strive to follow his example." And Brother Norman said, "Thank you. All right, let's move on to the next paragraph." Now I'm the one talking like an idiot. And the little boy tucked his chin as far as he could into his neck, and he looked down, and he made a sound like Theodore from Alvin and the Chipmunks. Imagine Judge Rutherford naked. That bag of hairy fruit right in your face. Now imagine it every day for 500 years. I'm sorry you had to go through that. Yeah. Had to build that time machine and get the hell out of there. I guess that's something I was wondering about, because it's... Oh boy, how do I put this delicately? There's not too many bears in this system of things that are able to devise complex machinery. And I couldn't help but wonder how you were... I don't know. Well... Arrogance of you. Yeah. And you decided to leave the paradise because you were bored? Well, no, not really. I had plenty to do. You were... I don't know. I'm trying to understand why you would leave paradise, which you're always talking about how everything sucks so bad. That's right. You traveled back through time in a time machine that you built yourself with your furry little paws. 500 billion years, everything starts talking. Calm down right now. And it was in the 80s, mostly in the 80s especially, but especially in the 90s, was a thing that was going on where the Kingdom Hall was glutted with welfare moms. It got to be, the Kingdom Hall, every time you turned around here, I think the viewers just don't understand. We don't get it. Well, I'll level with you. There was problems. Things get weird after a few billion years, if you know what I mean. That prophecy about the rocks crying out, that came true, and it scared the hell out of me. The rocks are crying out? Yeah, but after about 5